Hey guys, we've got a really interesting video here. It's by a really popular creator called Moon, and it's men are giving up and nobody cares. Now, I find this really interesting because as far as men goes, I'm pretty much as average as it comes. So hopefully we can get some insight here, and hopefully you find the video interesting.
Increasingly, more and more men are giving up. Giving up on relationships, careers, and society as a whole. Resentment is growing, unemployment is becoming rampant, and keeping your head above water seems almost impossible for many men today. This is leading to more men than ever dropping out of society entirely. And
Yeah, do you hear how he mentioned men are dropping out of society? So what that means is basically either dropping out for like a benefits check, or even just basically going off the grid and living off the land, so to speak. And I can understand that too. I mean, back in our grandfather's era, in the baby boomer period, you could literally have a Forrest Gump intelligence, work a factory job, and still have the dream of having a family, a woman that loves you, and the quality of life that you want off one wage. Those opportunities aren't really out there anymore, are they? So it's a wonder that fellas are thinking, well, this is no use. There's also other factors as well, like dating apps. It's a buyer's market now, and so the whole internet is skewed in this information age. So, you know, when people are swiping left and right or whatever on apps, it's based on appearances. Even jobs now are based on like a computer algorithm. So not only do you not have that old-fashioned financial advantage of yesteryear, but you don't even have that social advantage anymore. And yeah, it's making things extremely difficult.
And it's not just that. Men are becoming infantilized. With terms like adulting now becoming normal, it's clear that something ugly is happening and needs to be addressed. We live in such a strained, unnatural environment that is bound to start to wear on society. But men in particular are battling to keep up and are slowly giving up. Giving up on dreams, giving up on trying, and giving up on doing anything constructive.
I mean, all men want to have is peace and a sense of purpose. I mean, my favorite quote now is from John Wick 4, a man without purpose is a ghost looking for a grave. I would break my back if I felt like it went to something meaningful. And it just seems, according to Moon and what a lot of other people are saying on the internet, guys don't feel like they don't have anything meaningful to work for anymore. Like, the dating pool is very skewed. It's hard to find a lady now. It's hard to find a high enough paying job to give you the quality of life and build towards the future you could want. So yeah, I can understand why men are feeling this way, definitely.
And for a large part, it's really not their fault, as this trend isn't just a personal struggle, but a societal issue that we must urgently address. So why is this happening? And why has it gotten so bad in 2024? On the surface, it's a long and complicated story. Life has never been simple for any human, and objectively speaking, for men in the West today, it's never been better. We have all the technology we need, food delivered to your door with the tap of a finger, dating readily available to anyone with a simple swipe. Any products, items, or experiences that you want can be had with the tap of your phone. But
it's important that Moon actually brings up this point, and I'm not going to elaborate on it too much, but having all these conveniences that our forefathers and grandparents didn't have certainly takes the urgency out to work towards things. And you know, I'm kind of a little bit old-fashioned, even though we're in this information age. I like to really work hard and feel like I've earned the fruits of my labor, you know what I mean? But obviously with modern technology making everything so convenient, little things like that are actually taking that away from fellas now, I think.
There's the importance and necessity of struggle, without any value placed on higher goals. Where there just is no reason to care, means there's no reason for people to properly live or have the will to achieve greatness. Which is probably why 40% of young men aged 18 to 45 meet the criteria for depression, and 49% of 18 to 23-year-olds have had a thought of passing themselves in the past 2 weeks alone. And we're seeing the symptoms of this problem everywhere.
This is really deep, and I don't want to make this video about myself at all, but I'm a 43-year-old man. I'm very fortunate that I have a brand here and a lady who loves me and everything. And even then, I sort of battle with really dark thoughts. And it's not because I'm not grateful for what I have, because I think it's very important to practice gratitude. It certainly makes life easier and also change your perspective on how you think about things. But things can get very hard. And obviously we live in a society where men should be men, not complain, man up, and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest, to a point, I actually agree with that too, to be honest. No one's going to bat for you more than you're going to bat for yourself, you know what I mean? But when you're alone like that, it can put people in a very dark place. and I've certainly been there. So fellas, if you feel like that as well, speaking as an average man here, I've been through it too. Don't think you're defective. Sometimes you do entertain those thoughts when things get tough.
The sapping away of our vision and ambition permeates in all aspects of modern society today. Our culture, architecture, relationships, bodies, and minds. Past civilizations before us have always placed their emphasis on beauty, wisdom, and logic for all the population to see, with great town squares, bustling with art, life, and community. These things were placed above all else as the bedrock of their societies, laying out a code of honor and struggle in its people to achieve greatness. Comforts were shown in art and culture, but as an aspiration for achieving something great, for following your mastery. But today our cities are mostly devoid of all of this character, and instead they're marked out by the most cost-efficient, bland, and sterile designs to facilitate a simpler, self-motivated purpose. It's why people flock all over the world to a handful of remaining cities that retain their centuries-old charm to feel and experience the character of bygone societies that were motivated by higher ideals.
I think in the United States and in Australia, speaking from my own backyard, a lot of buildings look the same in the big cities and blend in to one another. I mean, obviously in the nighttime with all the lights on and the river and everything, depending where you live, things look very, very beautiful. But in the day, I mean, it's just a big, bland concrete jungle, and there's not really an uplifting feeling about it for sure.
Idea was greater than our modern two-dimensional ways of thinking. With a prioritization of comfort, lust and opulence, and flashy materialism over individual excellence and greater community, we're now reeling in the aftermath, becoming instead a generation of mandated mediocrity. And does this explain why men today seem to struggle more than ever while seemingly having more than ever? America in particular is not actually in a recession. In fact, on paper, the economy looks like the best it's been in a while. Unemployment has dropped, GDP is up. But what the people are actually experiencing is a completely different story. We can see this in a study by the University of Michigan on consumer sentiments, which gathers data based on how consumers feel about the current state of finances.
Well, of course, the big companies are going to look like they're doing well because us smaller folk down here at the bottom are spending what little money we have on, I guess you could say, the creature comforts to try and enrich our lives and make it just a little bit better.
In 2022, it dropped to an all-time low. Prices of our average daily needs like gas and food have increased in unbearable percentages. In contrast, salary increases do not match, putting a high strain on budgets.
Inflation is showing no signs of slowing down as Americans pay over $1,000 a month more on the same essentials we were buying 3 years ago. Nothing's changed but price. The latest consumer price...
Yeah, have a look at this. So food 2.2%. I think it's actually gone up a lot more in Australia where I live, to be honest. I mean, I don't have the figures here, but it certainly feels like it's more expensive than just 2.2%. Food away from home. Well, you know what? Food away from home, I look at that as a luxury, to be honest. So electricity, yeah, that's certainly more expensive. Housing, 5.7%. Ha! I can tell you right now in Australia, housing has gone up more than 5.7%. And car insurance, well, you know what, I haven't drove for a few years, so that's not my problem, thankfully, living in the city. But anyway, I just want to have a look at the graph.
Basic necessities like our food, housing, and gas are all continuing to cripple Americans' wallets with higher prices.
Our wages are actually down against inflation.
This guy looks like Nintendo 64 graphics.
So not only are prices soaring, but you know, our wages, at least if you measure hourly wages, are not keeping up at all.
Keeping your head above water has become the new normal instead of owning a home with a white picket fence. The rich are becoming richer and the poor are becoming poorer, with the middle class disintegrating completely.
I mean, I'm not anti-capitalist or anything. I'm a big believer in free market, but we would be lying to ourselves if we said right now it was fair. It's not really. And yeah, the richer are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. I'm not really fully capitalist and I'm not really fully socialistic. I'm somewhere in the middle. I do think that the people in need should be looked after, but I also don't think that if you're out there with a small business, you should go out there and give all your money to people that don't deserve it, you know what I mean? So I don't know what the solution is, but that's my 2 cents.
All the knowledge of the past of just going to college, getting a job, and buying a home immediately is just completely irrelevant for anyone working and living in 2024. The universities have skyrocketed in prices to absurd levels. The housing market is in a complete giant bubble. Everyone's sending out job applications more and more, all while using these automated testing systems, applying up to 100 jobs a day and still not getting anywhere.
That's one thing I absolutely hate today too. I remember back in the day, if you just wanted to go after a low-level job, like as a glassy in a pub, or like as a busboy or something, I think you call it in the United States. You could go in, meet an interviewer, and give a handshake. And now I have so many people in the workforce tell me everything is done by computer, and I've nearly made it to the final interview, and like the first stages are all done by computer. And I don't really like it that computers are now going by algorithm to find the best employer, because it just makes the employment process black and white now. You don't get the chance to have a handshake, to talk to somebody, see where they're at, make sure that they're not a psycho, you know. I hate it. I think this current system is wrong, but it's where we're at now.
Well, major companies repeatedly tell us that they can't find any workers for their companies. And the results of this are clear. People are drifting towards more unfulfilling jobs, or just not even having a job at all, while the rich buy up resources, real estate, and everything that used to be the cornerstones of the middle class that is now just an investment hidden through an offshore bank account for some giant investment fund.
Basically, what they want to do is create a nation of renters. BlackRock coming in and giving them more money than the house is worth.
How much more do they give them?
They can give them, 30% above.
Really?
Which is money.
And then they just lease those homes out.
And they lease them out. It's part of this idea that home ownership and automobile ownership and all of these things, these legacy systems that people want to get rid of. And they go,
I'm not as offended about the concept of renting long term anymore. Now, I know people like to have something to show for their name, and I can understand that. And I know if people are married and have families, they want to have like something stable, a roof over their head, something to carry on for their kids or the future or whatever. I get that. Sometimes, especially right now, renting and not owning something seems better than being locked down with a 30-year mortgage. And so in my case, it just seems more appealing right now, and I have to admit I'm a bit of a brokey, but right now it seems more appealing in my case to just have the freedom of renting and not being locked into something that I can't afford. Everyone's situation is going to be different, of course, but that's where I'm at.
Rent a house, use Uber, Lyft, whatever. You don't need to own. What does owning do for you? That's that famous article, you'll own nothing and be happy.
Right.
And because of this, all saving plans for regular people are halted because living paycheck to paycheck means there just isn't enough for a savings plan. And whilst there is still some hope to dig your way out, for most this does begin a damaged path. People end up working in a job that's not in their field, something that they hate to do every day, and eliminates the experience they need for the job in their field. And so even the experience they are getting is just completely useless for getting back on track. In effect, their now entry-level position is further deviating them from becoming lawyers, psychologists, or whichever career path they studied for. The middle class is experiencing this, then the lower earners are feeling this even more. The jobs they once had a chance of landing now go to the middle class, while they get hit a bump lower, which is putting millions of people in dire straits. They face working twice as hard for minimum wage, juggling between jobs, partaking in the gig economy with absolutely no security, all with an extreme pressure to keep up with daily expenses in a completely overpriced megacity.
I mean, honestly, how many of you guys right now feel any kind of security? I'm on a pretty decent wage. However, being that I do entertainment, media and everything, it's never the same every month. And, if it does fluctuate, I mean, your bills aren't going to fluctuate with what you're earning, you know what I mean? That's just my situation. A lot of people are working casual jobs. I mean, not as many people are working part-time and full-time jobs anymore. So I know I'm speaking as a self-employed. But in Australia, we have what's called casual positions, where 1 week someone might work 30 hours, 1 week 25 hours, 1 week 35 hours. But they don't get the holiday pays, the benefit, the sick pay and everything. And so they're always going to have that sense of unease on their back as well. So this is very, 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 very real.
Truth is, both middle and lower earners are now taking a huge hit to their egos. They feel disrespected through no fault of their own, as no man wants to feel like a failure. They don't want to feel like they're not providing or on their destiny.
Yeah, we
Imagine
want to feel
putting
useful.
in the hours and effort to get a degree and then having to take a job that's not even within the field you studied for.
Yeah, I
But
get
this
it.
is just regular life for most people nowadays.
I think there is one area where people have to have agency. If you go to university, you need to make sure the rewards meet the effort, you know what I mean? You need to make sure that the degree you're going for is a position that's in demand. And you also need to make sure it's paying a lot of money to pay your uni debt, you know what I mean? Obviously, people going to university, college and all that, they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt now. And so, obviously, if you're going for, I don't know, a law degree, just for example, it's going to pay a lot more money than like something in gender studies, for example. There has to be some agency with what learning you get in university, I think.
It's making men feel incredibly depressed and isolated. They watch all this stuff on social media, they see people flexing the Rolexes on their Instagram stories. Meanwhile, they're struggling to survive, living a life they absolutely hate. And when friends and family ask about it, they suffer the humiliation of explaining why they had to take what was available. Even though it isn't humiliating at all, and they're doing what they can to survive, it definitely takes a huge effect on their mental health.
I think it's crazy in this day and age that working a lower tier job like fast food, for example, is frowned upon more than being unemployed on benefits because you're lazy and not contributing. I'm not saying all unemployed people are lazy. I'm just talking about that bracket, for example. It's just very strange.
Especially as it wasn't that long ago, where it was actually normal to enter the workforce with a mentor who would show you the ropes and encourage you and push you to learn more. Starting at the bottom didn't seem so bad because there was an opportunity to grow and reap more rewards, but this imperative step is slowly slipping away. Companies of prestige have forgotten the generation with no experience, and for many companies, this is what they want. This is actually the ideal scenario, where they have people so desperate, so in need of experience, that they can treat their workers like absolute trash.
Oh, right.
Since the 1980s, testosterone levels have dropped more than 50%, and yet we're told to ignore it. Why? Because there's a coordinated effort to suppress masculinity and turn men into something they were never meant to be. This decline is no accident. We're constantly exposed to harmful chemicals in our food and everyday products, bombarded with estrogenic chemicals from plastics, junk food, and sedentary lifestyles, which is why testosterone levels have been declining for decades, with a 17% drop among 60-year-olds in 2004 compared to 1987. Sperm count and strength in men are also decreasing exponentially, with a 32.5% decrease in mean sperm concentration in the last 50 years.
Look, you know what? I think we need to have accountability for what we eat. But the marketing machine is very strong, and they're always putting junk in front of our face, and oftentimes cheaper than the healthy option as well. And, obviously with different factors in life, when we're of lower will, we're going to take the point or the journey of least resistance, right? And that concludes with our health and well-being in that department as well.
The cost of having a job also plays a part in stripping them of their dignity. Transport costs to their job, depending on the amount, could take a huge chunk of their salary, so that at the end of the day, they can only pay for rent or food and not both. A government grant could replace their salaries, and they earn more or less the same amount.
What's also helping to pay the bills is, as I said, the U.S. government, in particular, our disability programs for people who are unable to work. Those programs seem to have morphed away from their original humane intention and now seem to provide an alternative income source to regular employment for several millions, for millions and millions of these guys.
I wonder that, to be honest, because now this is a touchy subject and I ain't being disrespectful when I bring this up. I can only speak from it from my point of view and from my stream over the years. I quite often get people tell me that they can't work and that they're on disability, and they seem to be very coherent and even to a point very, very intelligent, easy to have a conversation with, no real social issues or anything like that. I'd be lying if I didn't think certain people were being suppressed with an easy paycheck. Let's just put it that way.
Job doesn't support your basic needs of a home, food, and transport, it wears thin in justifying the effort for this job, especially if you're not getting any experience. And in most cases, if you go into the gig economy, absolutely no security either. All for minimum wage. There's even a new term called quietly quitting, where you do the bare minimum of your job to the point that you're almost rendered useless and you get fired or simply quit. The fact that this term even exists shows that attention is desperately needed to solve this problem. And
as I said, I don't think quiet quitting is bad if you've tried all the other means, like advancing in your job, and you've given it your best shot, and if you're not showing the respect or the rewards that you deserve, then I think quiet quitting is perfect until you have another position. But it should be a means to that end. It shouldn't be a way of living, I don't think, definitely.
While this is happening, it's becoming more and more common for both partners in a household to be living the same life, or even with most males' partners actually being the breadwinner. And whilst this isn't necessarily a problem at all, it is leading to some weird modern problems in the household. Men with families are actually switching their roles with their wives, except they're not actually doing what their wives would do if they were to stay at home.
When you look at what I guess in Britain is called NEET, N-E-E-T, do you say that also in Australia, neither employed nor in education or training? When you look at that huge group of well over 6 million prime age men, the story they're telling about their lives is really pretty devastating. It's pretty distressing. They basically don't do civil society. There's almost no worship, almost no volunteering, almost no charitable work. They've got a lot of time on their hands, but they report doing strangely little help around the home or help with other people at home.
Situation. Some men may feel a sense of worthlessness and resentment. Some men might take an hour to clean up the house and fetch the kids, but the rest of the day they sleep or play games. In some cases, the wives work and then come home to finish the chores their husbands were meant to do but didn't.
That must
And
be
whilst this
very
might
hard
cause
for the
huge
marriage.
problems, it still feels better off to the husbands. If asked what they do for a living, saying they're on a break or working on a project beats the humiliation of saying they work in McDonald's with a useless degree on their back. Men without families have nothing to lose, so they stop working because no woman would even want them anyway. They can't afford to date, they can't afford a family, and since their own families are supportive, it somehow justifies them giving up and staying at home.
Yeah. You know, I take the role of marriage very seriously, and I've always been very open about this. If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't think I could afford it, I would probably be married to my wonderful woman tomorrow. I just don't want to be in a position where I can't provide, feel useful, and take care of a family, you know what I mean? And this is something that's going through my mind, and I'm sure it's going through other guys' minds as well.
Rather than facing these societal problems head on, with prices rising, getting hired becoming harder and harder by the day, and inequality becoming rampant within society, most men are just deciding to give up. Because instead of facing the hardships of having a job, it just seems so much easier to escape. Whether it be terminally being online, playing video games all day, or hiding behind doing chores at home
These
to
are
show
all
they still
things
have
that
a
are fine, but
purpose
they
and are
shouldn't
doing
be an
their best.
escape.
The point being that for many
They
men in
should be an
2024, if they're gonna be disrespected and feel worthless, they may as well choose the easy way out than a battle. If respect had a currency on how it would affect your life directly, you would see a different picture. A man with a job with high pressure, long hours, and doing something that makes him feel degraded would be worth say $100, but staying at home playing games and escaping, all while being with the people he loves, is probably worth $200 because of how it affects him. This explains why more and more men are deciding to drop out of society rather than face it head on, as it just seems to be the easier path. If it's a choice between two paths, one that offers little satisfaction while the other provides comfort, it's easy to see why men are going this route. But the thing is, this is a terrible mistake. And this is creating problems that we've never seen before. If there is no emphasis or any facilitation of the need to aspire to something greater and the game seems rigged to most who are playing it, it's hardly a surprise record numbers of men are dropping out and giving up on the game entirely.
I mean, all I want to say at this point of the video is, fellas, don't give up. Like, it's better to try something than to do nothing. I really, truly believe that. If you try something and it's not working out, then try something else. Whether you can afford to live well or not. I mean, I just really, truly believe trying is better than doing nothing. I think if you take the point of least resistance, things are only going to get worse and worse and worse in the long run. And the cost of living is hopeless. It's really expensive now. I get that. But trying is better than doing nothing. I really do believe that. So keep on keeping on, fellas.
Problem is that there's a huge group of men, roughly about 7 million in America between the ages of 25 and 55, who are not working and are actively not looking for work. Now, COVID certainly had a hand in accelerating these figures. One question posed to these dropouts was how many of these men were on pain medication, and almost half of these men admitted to taking pain medication daily. And aside from those who desperately need it, these figures could indicate that men are aimlessly numbing themselves to their new reality. And this is great for society, as people don't have to deal with this huge problem. And what's...
You know, even over the last decade, I feel like a lot of doctors have just been handing out anti-anxiety medication, antidepressants, just like candy. You can just pretty much literally go into a doctor and be like, oh, I'm depressed, I have anxiety. And they'll just drug you up and basically numb you to the world. Which is good that obviously that you feel better, but I think people would rather be drugged out than go and take agency of their situation. I'm not saying that things aren't tough or horrible. I agree with everything that's being said in this video. It's a shame people are taking the route of just being drugged out and, you know, under.
What's even more shocking is that 40% of these men do have some kind of degree.
What sort of men are in this group? Demographically, education, family structure, ethnicity, who makes up this group?
Surprisingly large, representation of guys with college or even college degrees. 40% of this group has at least some college, and as I recall, about a fifth or a sixth are college grads.
The decision to be in this state is closely related to changing times. We've already discussed the effects of brain rot in another upload, which disabled problem solving in Generation Z and has already presented problems in finding jobs.
It's another way people are numbing them out and escaping from the world, right? You used to be able to do pretty well making sophisticated long videos, and then it went into the short form video era, and now it's gone into like 10-second video next, 10-second video next, and sometimes people are watching like dozens of video in a 5-minute time span. It's just another way people are numbing themselves out to forget about what's going on in the world.
They are quick to quit at the first difficult task and move on to find something else, but what happens when options run dry and they find themselves simply stuck in limbo? Giving up seems to be the next step, and accepting that is easy when they're discouraged by the situation. Working off of surveys, the data compiled indicates that these men are not only not working, but they're cutting themselves off from their communities, or there's no incentivization for them to even have any community in the first place. They're hiding out because going out would mean meeting new people who might oppose their lifestyles.
Well, people don't seem to be as approachable these days. I mean, maybe in the country and rural areas they are, but you walk around the city, it's very hard to meet other people. Everyone have just got that quiet look of desperation on their face and stress. You can just walk around the city every day and just see how tough people are doing it. And, you know, they're kind of in their own bubble just trying to get by. I think the last thing they want to do is engage and make friends these days. It's a polar opposite if I go somewhere like Thailand, where my girlfriend's from, you know. Maybe in Bangkok it's pretty similar these days, but if you go in the rural areas, it's still got those old-fashioned values, guys, where a guy can work, not a high-paying job, but work really hard every day, still support a family. A lovely woman will want to marry that guy, and then everyone's sitting in their front yards in the rural areas having barbecue with one another. The neighbors will walk past, say hi. It's easy to make new friends. There's just a real sense of community. I really wish that was the case in the West, but it isn't right now anymore.
Makes it uncomfortable. Why leave when you can just aimlessly watch brain rot content and numb yourself with weed or pain medication and stay inside in the warm comfort of home? And any sexual needs you have can be satisfied with pixels on a screen. This lifestyle is increasingly becoming more and more normal for men in the West. But what's important to note is that men don't want to be this way. It's a horrible lifestyle, it's depressing, it's atomizing. What this really is just a coping mechanism or a form of self-defense against a society that's becoming increasingly hostile to these men. Up until recently, the problem has been invisible. These figures weren't shown in any statistics or surveys because they slipped through the cracks until very recently. So why did they slip through the cracks? Well, it's easy to see. They simply don't fit the victim criteria. Some have degrees, they're in the prime of their lives, and it was their choice to quit. It's easily overlooked and only comes to light as the numbers rise. Nicholas Upstart wrote a book called Men Without Work, and has since exposed and addressed the problems in his book. He says he is trained to look for hidden in plain sight problems, which is how he stumbled upon this issue. You see, these men are not causing trouble, at least for now, and they don't seem to be drawing any attention to themselves. On the contrary, they keep to themselves. So surveys and statistics just don't include them at all. They don't even register on the scale, and people in society think this is a joke issue. And it's also reasonable to conclude that some of these men may work, but in the underground economy. Work like formal cash jobs or even shady legal ways of making money. But of course, this is just a minor portion of these men. We need to address the problem head on. How is the situation getting this bad? These men have completely lost their purpose in life. All of their duty, their hopes, their responsibilities, their own dignity and value. It's being completely decimated at the moment. And we're seeing them.
Well, that's $1 million question. I mean, we've spoken about all the problems now, and we haven't really addressed any solutions, huh? I guess it's really just a matter of reverse engineering, I guess. Like I said, men want to feel useful. They want to feel like they're a productive member of society. They want to feel like their efforts are appreciated. And they want to have something to work and strive for. So, as long as men have those two things, and peace. So, a purpose, to feel useful, and to have a life of peace. I truly think that as an average man. So I think as long as they have those three things, things will get a lot better for the male generation here. Obviously, we have to reverse engineer from those three things and find the solutions, but at least that's a starting point.
With the form of radicalization online, growing hatred and division, and a general apathy towards society as a whole. And the longer this is ignored, the harder it's going to be addressed down the line. More men today than ever feel disconnected, disillusioned, and left behind by a world that seems increasingly indifferent to their struggles. While GDP numbers and employment stats may sound like an easy, good solution on paper, especially to government bureaucracies, it will never really fix the reality of the situation for normal people. The real challenge we face today in the West is to find purpose and meaning again, to have any reason to even want to participate and achieve greatness in society. We should focus on creating environments where people can thrive, where beauty, philosophy, and higher noble pursuits are actively encouraged by the cities and countries that we inhabit, which would give millions of men a reason to care again.
There you go. I couldn't have put that any better myself. I'm not a very intelligent or articulate guy, but I'm glad a guy like Moon here to allow us to think a little bit more. But thank you for watching, guys. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll see you on the next one.